Hi, I hope you're having a really good evening. My name's Tracy McLennan. I wanted to pop on tonight and just talk a little bit about some of the things that made me decide to set up Best Dog Learning and stuff. I first started learning about dog training about 17 or 18 years ago now when I got my first dog. He was a male bull mastiff. I got him as a puppy. I 100% agree, bull mastiff is not a suitable dog for a first time dog owner. Absolutely. I'd never had a dog and I had no idea how difficult bringing up a puppy could be, and to bring up such a large puppy just made the situation more difficult. Now, to make matters worse, the puppy I chose to bring home was particularly strong-willed. Now, I've been watching some beautiful videos this week of a dog trainer friend of mine's puppy, and when he's playing with the other dogs that she has, if he gets too rough and he's being a bit silly, they might bark at him. They're very gentle with him. They might bark and move themselves away, and he goes, oh, maybe I won't do that anymore, I'll do something else. And he changes his behaviour, and then he's learned, and he will learn over time to be more gentle. The puppy I brought home was not like that. I went to visit my puppy, Kalgakis. When he was 5 weeks old, he was still with his mum and his litter mates, and he was bullying one of the other puppies in his litter. He was just trying to play, but she didn't want to, and he wouldn't stop. Eventually, his mum went over and physically stood in between them so that he had to stop. So he waited until she moved, and then he just carried on. And she barked at him and stood in front of him. He did the same thing. He waited until she moved, and then he just carried on playing with his litter mate, who was quite frightened by this point, didn't want to play. Eventually, the mum had grabbed him and he was bleeding. And what stopped him, that had no impact on him whatsoever. He just stood there and waited until the mum moved away and then went to carry on. And what stopped the situation was his breeders picking him up and putting him out the room so that he could have a rest, because he wasn't going to stop on his own, and being told to back off by a much, much larger dog didn't have any impact on him. So I chose to bring that puppy home with me. And as he reached adolescence, he had an extremely horrible experience. That wasn't my fault, but he did have an awful experience, and he became aggressive towards all other dogs. And that's when I started really to learn about dog training. Now, I had 3 things going for me at that point that really helped. The first of them was that I'd been going to a training class where the trainer is an absolutely brilliant clicker trainer, and she had taught me how to clicker train. So I already knew what a powerful tool that was for helping dogs to learn different things, to encourage different behaviour in them, and that knowledge really helped. The particular class I went to couldn't help because at that time they were using quite harsh methods on dogs that showed aggression, which absolutely would not have been suitable to do with Kalgakis. I suspect he would have eaten me eventually if I'd been horrible to him. He never was horrible to anybody. He was a sweet, sweet dog. Even vets loved him because he was so well behaved. He was absolutely no problem at any time with people, but he had never had the experience of anybody being really horrible to him, and I suspect that made all the difference. So the first thing that I had going for me was clicker training. The second thing that I had going for me was that at that point I had been working full-time as a computer programmer for several years, so I had really good problem-solving skills, and problem-solving skills are one of the things that you really need if you're going to help a dog get over issues like the issues that Kalgakis had. And the third thing that I had was an ability to dig around in problems, to pay attention to tiny details, and to kind of ignore people not necessarily understanding and coming up with alternative solutions to things that perhaps didn't fit well, and also being able to articulate those quite well. Now, again, that partly came from my job, partly from the degree. I had a degree in philosophy, and so I was used to having to think things through, but also for my job, it requires an incredible amount of attention to detail. And also, people will regularly come up with solutions for programmers. I routinely speak to people, even now. Now I've been doing the job for 21 years. And even now, people will come to me who know nothing about our system and tell me what I need to do to fix it. And regularly I will have to politely explain to them why what they're suggesting might not work or what we could do differently. Now, dog training is no different, really, in my experience. And the good news is that these three things can all be taught. I'm used to teaching them. I've taught numerous people over the years how to be a computer programmer, how to work in the area that I work in, where we work directly with the end users of the system that we look after. So we are regularly having to have these conversations and do that sort of teaching. So I'm very used to teaching people that sort of thing. And these are skills, in my experience, these are skills that can be learned. And part of the reason that I wanted to set up Best Dog Learning and stuff was to start teaching some of those things to people who are like I was, struggling with difficult dogs or finding themselves slightly overwhelmed by the dog that they've got. They don't necessarily have to be in the situation I was in with Kalgakis. A lot of the time, when people particularly are new to having dogs, it's all overwhelming. It certainly was for me before Kalgakis had problems with other dogs. I regularly felt overwhelmed by him, and I know that I'm not alone. So, and the good news is about some of the things that I was doing. The good news is that the dogs can get better. Kalgakis got over his problems completely. He went from being a dog who couldn't see another dog across a playing field from us without barking and lunging at it, to being the only dog that I've lived with who I will deliberately take to country parks and look for young dogs, young adolescent dogs for them to play with. Kalgakis, after he was over his problems, he loved it if dogs ran over and wanted to play with him. He thought it was the best thing in the world. And he stayed like that into old age. Nothing made him happier than a young dog charging across the park and wanting to engage in a game with him. He was also spectacular with nervous dogs. He had a real skill at making them feel safer and feeling able to come out of themselves a bit. And sometimes those dogs would play with him too. And he was quite strict about, he didn't like any arguments between dogs or people really. He wanted everybody to get along very well, and he would always be quick to step in if he thought that his dog friends were maybe going to fall out with each other, or if he was in a group where he felt as though arguments might break out, he would always step in and stop that from happening. And he was so big and so had such a presence that generally everybody would stop if he said. They would all just stop and stand still and then maybe go off and do something a bit calmer and not fall out. So I started Best Dog Learning and stuff mostly because I want to start sharing the skills that I used and that I learned to help Kalgakis get over his problems with other people. And particularly, I'm really particularly interested in working with people who are like I was. I had no friends really that had dogs. I was very isolated at the start when Calgacus started having problems, really it was very difficult for me to find sensible help. People tended to want to be horrible to dogs who were behaving like Calgacus, and I found it difficult to get help that I felt would be useful for Calgacus. And I have never forgotten the feelings of isolation and loneliness that I felt at the start of that journey. And I know that there are a large number of people going through the same thing as I went through. And that's mostly why I started the company. So do keep an eye out on the Facebook page. I've got a couple of really exciting announcements coming up in the next week or two. I'm not quite ready with them yet, but I will be ready in the next week or two. So do keep an eye on the Facebook page, and I will let everybody know when I'm ready to make the next announcement. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye for now.